Now joining me on the Peerless Boilers hotline, Peerless Builds, America's Best Boilers, the New York Rangers color analyst on MSG will be on the call tomorrow night. Game 7, Ottawa Senators up against the New York Rangers at Madison Square Garden, along with Sam Rosen, and that is Joe Micheletti. Joe, Zach Gelb here, DARPATV.com in New York. Thank you for joining me, and how are you?
Zach, I am doing just fantastic. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for coming on. It is a pleasure. You know, you look at the last 2 years in the NHL, we have 3 Game 7s just tomorrow night. We already see the President Trophy, Vancouver Canucks. They're out of it. And then last year, Vancouver played Boston in the Stanley Cup Finals, and Boston went on the road and got the job done in Game 7. How much of home ice advantage, how much do you put an importance on that for Joe Micheletti?
Well, I have always tended to think that home ice or home ice comes into play, I think most importantly in a Game 7, even though that did not happen for Vancouver last year against Boston, but I think there's a few other reasons why they lost, in particular injuries and momentum that Boston had. But I think it's most important for a Game 7. Other than that, and this is a great year to just look at what the records have been. I believe it's 28-16 for the road teams up to this point. And but I think Game 7 gives the team at home a little extra juice. The home crowd is into it. Game 7 atmosphere is unlike any other game in a series. It's just a special event, and that's where I think Game 7 comes into play the most.
You played college hockey at Minnesota under the legendary Herb Brooks, and Herb's played in a few big games and coached a few big games himself. If Herb was the coach of the New York Rangers instead of John Tortorella, how do you think he would address his team before the game?
Well, it's interesting, but I won a couple of national championships with Herb, and the first one just happened to be his pregame speech to us was somewhat similar to what he was saying to the Olympic team in 1980, actually. That, for us, I was a freshman. That particular team was made up of all U.S.-born kids, in fact, all Minnesota kids. And as we got more confident over the course of the season and then got to the national championship game, his speech to us was, your team, you guys, you players, you are a team of destiny. You're here because of destiny, and that's what's going to help you win this game tonight. And remember that. And so that's what he kind of, that was his speech as a freshman. Later on, when we won it again, it was more of a kind of a confidence building. You're the best team. You're supposed to be here. You've proven before in the past, and we had a lot of players on that team that had already won a national championship, that you know how to win, and let's finish it off. And so he used a couple of different things based on the personnel he had on his team.
A lot of emotions going into a Game 7, and we already seen this so far in this series, what's happened with suspensions. Henrik Lundqvist was very fired up, to say the least, after that Game 6 victory on the road in Ottawa. Chris Neil had some controversial comments. As a Rangers player, how do you keep your emotions intact so you don't find your way in the penalty box?
I think it starts with the coach. I mean, all season long, we've seen this team kind of just go about their business, is the quote that the coach used so often over the course of the regular season. And John Tortorella has done a magnificent job of keeping this team thinking the right way. Even though they led the league in fighting majors, it was not a team that took bad penalties. They were a very disciplined team. And so even though the officiating has kind of been all over the place in this year's playoffs, for the most part, they've been a team that just kind of seems to be on this road that they know where they're going. And there have not been many highs and lows. And so I think with John Tortorella in Game 7 and with some of the other players that they have on the team that have played in Game 7s in the past, including Brad Richards, including Mike Rupp, including Ruslan Fedotenko, So along with the coach and the players that have already been there, I just don't think it's going to be an issue as far as keeping their emotions where they're supposed to be.
You know, you look at the Rangers' tough guys through the course of the season, it's really two guys in my mind, Prust and Rupp. Prust took advantage of that and got into a fight with Chris Neil in Game 6, but you did mention Mike Rupp. Have you been shocked that he's been pretty much quiet throughout this whole series?
No, I haven't, because, again, this is a team that strategically decides when they need to fight and step up and when they don't. And again, that comes from the coach. The coach is not a huge believer that you just go out and start a fight for the sake of starting a fight. This is a team that he has coached all season long that has talked about team toughness, stay together as a team, fight together as a team, win together as a team, defend as a team, score goals as a team. And so everything is based around being a team and acting the way you're supposed to act no matter what the situation is as a team. So I personally, I don't separate the Prust and the Rupp from everybody else. It's them doing their job and doing it together as part of this group.
You look in the goaltender, and I've been watching him ever since he came to New York, and he's been a complete and utter stud. He's a Vezina finalist. That was just announced today, but you saw him in the postgame. He was very fiery. He was very ticked off about that goal, and I know you changed your stance on that goal just like I did. When I first saw it, I said there's no way it's a goal, and then you never saw it definitively get kicked in by Chris Neil because you never got a clear angle, but I've never seen Lundqvist that fired up after a game.
No, nor have I. I mean, the one thing about Henrik Lundqvist is that he is a tremendous competitor, and as big a competitor as anyone that I've been around. He's the same way in practice. He does not like to get scored on in practice, but for him to take it to that next level is a little bit surprising. But again, with Lundqvist, he felt that there was an injustice. And there should have been a goaltender interference before the puck ended up going in the net, but that was what was really missed on the play. And so he just responded to the way that is not a huge surprise to a lot of people. And I just think that it is more or less just a continuation of getting ready for Game 7.
Game 7 tomorrow night, MSG, Joe Micheletti, Sam Rosen on the call for MSG. We're joined now with Joe Micheletti, and Joe Hagelin came back, had an incredible game, really kept that puck moving, and he kept plays going. The Rangers have to be impressed from what they saw with Carl Hagelin.
You know, it's interesting, Zach, that just prior to Game 6, I was talking, Sam and I were talking to John Tortorella, and we got talking about Hagelin a little bit, and what John said was that he not only has great speed and quickness that we've talked about, all season long, but he said it makes the rest of our team quicker. It picks up the pace of our team. And that was really apparent, I thought, in Game 6. Hagelin played about 15 minutes in that game, but he was so involved because of his speed. And what the Rangers, what the other players do, is when they get the puck and he's on the ice, if they don't have a play, they just throw it to a certain area and they let him chase it down. And the other thing that's happened because of his speed and quickness is that it forces the defenseman for Ottawa to have to make a quicker decision with the puck and what to do with it. And they get rid of it a little sooner than I think they would like to. So having Hagelin in the lineup really makes a huge difference with the pace of the game and the way the Rangers approach games.
In that Game 6, the Rangers added Carl Hagelin, just like we were talking about, but they lost Brian Boyle due to the concussion. What are you hearing about Boyle's status for tomorrow's game?
Well, as of today, he did not practice with the team, so I can only speculate that he will not be playing tomorrow's game. At least I don't anticipate that to happen. And he hasn't been on the ice since he was hit, so I don't anticipate him playing.
Let's just say by some miracle Boyle is on the ice. Who do you think Tortorella will scratch?
That's a good question, and that would be a tough question. But it would probably. We'd probably look at somebody on that fourth line that doesn't get the kind of minutes
Mitchell?
that they normally would. Mitchell would be certainly a candidate, even though John has liked using him in certain situations. It's a good question. I don't think we're going to get there, but it's certainly a good question.
In Boyle's absence, Stefan and Kreider, the two youngsters, really stepped up big in that game. You look at the run that Kreider's been on, was in that Frozen Four, then signs with the Rangers, then gets a goal in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Do you think Carl Hagelin could really take in what he's doing right now on the ice with this Rangers club?
Well, I think what's happened with him is that, like any young kids, when they come in, and especially coming from college hockey to professional hockey, and I did that back years ago when I played. I went right from college to the pros, and the first thing you do is you're just not very comfortable. I mean, you sit down, you really don't know many people, even though he knew a few of those, but still, it's such a large jump to that level that it takes a certain period of time to get comfortable. And for Kreider, you could just see him every day that he was with this group of players, and in particular after he played a few games, he became more and more comfortable in his environment, and he became more and more comfortable on the ice, thinking that, hey, wait a second, I do belong here. But you have to find that out, and he did find that out, and I think that his play in Game 6 just might propel him to something that might be really special, and something that we should probably pay attention to, because he looked in Game 6 like this was going to be a real big-time player for a long time in the National Hockey League, and I think that just gives him more confidence for Game 7.
Well, Joe, I was talking to Jim Devellano, the Hockey Hall of Famer, senior vice president for the Detroit Red Wings out there, and he basically told me those teams, when they draft these players, they know they could play. They know they could come in and make an impact, but the big reason why they usually go out there and bring these guys in right from college into the pros is really just to knock a year off the contract.
Well, in this particular case, what ended up happening, because of his age 20, no matter when he signed the contract over the course of the season, if you're age 20, the contract automatically starts. So by signing his contract to play in the playoffs, he basically signed a 3-year contract, and at this point he's got 2 years left because the season's already over, and he did not make one nickel off his first year's salary. So it's real interesting, and it's actually better for the player, because the player then has one less year to get to free agency, and so it's actually a good deal for the player. Most teams don't like letting those young players get to that point because of that. And so, but with Kreider, because of his age, and as soon as he signed, he had already lost a year on his deal.
Well, I'll tell you this, if he keeps on playing the way he's been playing in the playoffs, it's going to be an easy decision for Glenn Sather. He's going to have to go out there and re-sign this kid right away.
Oh, believe me, if when it gets to that, if he's as good as what we and everybody else think he's going to be, the teams do not mind at all paying players what they are worth. If they're going to, give you that value, they don't mind paying. And if Kreider continues to grow like everyone thinks he's going to, then the Rangers will be more than happy to pay him what his value is.
Zach Gelb here on DARPA TV, and we're talking to Joe Micheletti on the Peerless Boilers Hotline. Peerless builds America's best boilers. Joe, let's go to the Rangers power play. It's been up and down all throughout this series. There's been some players that had some success on this power play. Stroman comes to mind. You saw Richards get a power play goal the other night. What's been the issue with this Rangers power play? How's it gone from looking so good in Game 6 and so bad for virtually the rest of the series?
Yeah, and it's kind of been that way, Zach, for most of the season as well. They did get a little jump in their power play towards the end of the season when Matt Zuccarello was called up from the Connecticut Whale in the American Hockey League, and he gave him a little boost because of his ability to make plays. And all season long, it's been a problem because they haven't had really that big trigger on defense that could really shoot the puck. And so there have been many different combinations. And what John Tortorella did in Game 6 was interesting. He said he really wanted to try and have both Richards and Stepan on the ice simultaneously because of their ability to see the ice and read a situation and make a play. Now, when they got in trouble is when they don't move, and they don't move the puck, and they stay to the outside, and they don't attack. And what this power play did in game number 6 is they attacked. They moved the puck. They moved their bodies in order to change and find some passing lanes. And the goal that Stepan scored on the power play was an absolute perfect timing play between Richards and Stepan. They saw each other. They moved to find a lane. Richards with a perfect pass and Stepan with a deflection in. It was the thing of beauty.
One thing I've noticed, and I think this has been a big difference, and I know it sounds so simple, it basically comes down to, in my eyes, winning faceoffs. Because how many times this year have we seen the Rangers center lose a faceoff, the defenseman from the other team sends the puck all the way down, the Rangers take it back into the zone, get one shot, we're back at a faceoff again, and then it's the same thing again. They lose another faceoff, and then the puck is sent all the way down. The Rangers really got to win those faceoffs if they want to win this Game 7.
Yeah, Zach, you make a really good point, and what you end up hearing more and more from coaches once the playoffs start is more emphasis on faceoffs. And you look at Ottawa as an example, and Zenon Konopka, who was in the lineup since Game 2 and was a healthy scratch for, I think, 27 games during the course of the regular season, he suddenly becomes a very important player for Ottawa in this series because he wins faceoffs. And he's been... I know going into Game 6 he was at 72%, which is just phenomenal. And he had a great start to game number 6 and then faltered a little bit. But the Rangers started figuring out a few things. But the point you make is well taken. You win the face-off, and now you have control of the puck, and now you can set up plays, and now you can get shots, and you can put on offensive zone pressure. But as soon as you lose the face-off and the other team clears it down the ice, that's close to 30 seconds being taken off your power play.
Two more as we're talking to Joe Micheletti, who will be on the call tomorrow night. MSG, 7 p.m. is the start time. The 8-seed Ottawa Senators going up against the 1-seed New York Rangers. The Rangers finally found an answer to get past Craig Anderson, who was dominating the Rangers for almost 2.5 games. You got to be confident if you're that Rangers bunch going up against Anderson in this Game 7.
Well, they certainly feel better that they found a way to score some goals. You're right, Zach. Anderson was very, very good in games 2, 3, and 4, and then of course in Game 5 he's able to get the shutout. But the thing with Anderson that I think the Rangers are trying to exploit is they want him moving side to side. When he's a straight-on goaltender and he sets himself for a straight-on shot, he's been nearly unbeatable. But if you can get him moving, then he's got a few holes in his game. But he's a very competitive goaltender. He's had a good record playing at Madison Square Garden. And here's a player that the other thing to remember is that he's never won a playoff series since he's turned professional. So he's trying hard to try and win that first series. But like everybody else, you start thinking about it a little bit, and it's a difficult thing to get.
I look at a Game 7 and I think of three things. If you want to win a Game 7, you have to have a hot goaltender, and you rely on your captain, and you also rely on your veterans. You look at the Rangers, we know Lundqvist, bearing some kind of disaster, is going to have another great game. He's done it through almost every game of this series. The three players, if I'm the Rangers, you really got to rely on is those three big offensive players, Brad Richards, Marian Gaborik, and Ryan Callahan. Callahan's been having a good series. Richards played a good Game 6. You really got to get a big effort, though, from Marian Gaborik. Minus Game 1, he really hasn't been able to put the puck in the net.
Yeah, and I'll add one other aspect to that as well, Zach, is that, and we've seen this before, is that sometimes in a Game 7, the players that you expect to get the job done don't always get it done, and sometimes it ends up being a role player that scores the big goal, and the Rangers have a couple of those that have been through it. Ruslan Fedotenko scored both goals in Game 7 in 2004 to win that game and win the Stanley Cup 2-1. And Mike Rupp, back when he was a rookie, back in 2003, won the Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, scored the game-winning goal. So sometimes it's the role players that you forget about that end up becoming a hero, and the Rangers have a couple of those. But I agree with you that if the Rangers are going to get through this game, they still need their top players to perform at a very high level.
Joe, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it. Enjoy Game 7 tomorrow night. Best of luck to the Rangers. Hopefully they get a win, and hopefully they'll be advancing on to the second round.
Okay, Zach, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it, and good to be with you.